Hey guys, Ken Smith Fishing. Sorry I've been away for a few days. Thank you for all the well wishes. I know, although I've got the gray hair here, my wife Sarah and I welcomed our new son to the fold. So we have a new team member. That would be Hollis Walker Smith, and I'm sure you guys will get a look at Hollis here in the very near future. So we now have a huge pack, but we're very excited, and he's healthy, and other than a little sleep deprivation, everything's going great. So that's our home front update. I want to talk. I guess I want to poke the bear a little bit this week. And so I had a lot of questions last year when I did not fish the Costa events as to why I didn't fish the Costas, and I didn't talk much about it. But basically what it boiled down to was, for the third year in a row, Costa increased our entry fees with no increase to our payout. And there's been a lot of talk on a lot of the fishing forums that, you know, some of these payouts are in the 50 and 60% range if the winners aren't Ranger qualified, which fortunately I am, running a Ranger boat. But I'm having basically the same issues now with the BFLs. They've increased our entry fees several years in a row, and it's getting harder for me to fish them. If I find an alternative to them, I will probably jump to it, and I'm going to look at that pretty hard next year when I make my decisions about what I'm going to fish. I've heard that FLW is going to make it better, but we'll see. So that leads me to what brought me to the topic for this week's conversation, and that was the Forcewood Cup. I watched the Cup this over the last several days, kind of cheering some friends on, and it really struck me at the end of the deal to see what the payouts were. And I guess I hadn't paid that much attention to them, but I see all these guys who made the Cup, which is the goal for the year, and you know, they bring their whole families up there to watch the weigh-in, and they get 30th place, and they get a $10,000 check or whatever that check number is. And you start kind of adding up the cost of being there and the cost of bringing the family, and basically all they're doing is getting a little vacation and making a few $1,000, and that just doesn't seem right to me. I know to some degree our sport is still in its infancy. From a payout standpoint, I mean, you look at the PGA Tour back before Tiger Woods, and it's nothing like it is today. But and by the way, so let me just address this: Major League Fishing, or whatever they're calling themselves now. I think it's still Major League Fishing, but I know they've got a couple of circuits going. I applaud those guys so much for what they did. I don't know that it's working. I don't know that it's not working. I don't personally enjoy the format. I'm a 5-fish guy, but I watch it. You know, it's still enjoyable to watch, and it's amazing how much those guys spin out on camera. That's pretty fun to watch sometimes. But kudos to those guys for stepping away from what they knew for years and years and starting their own deal. Because let's face it, other than doing what I'm doing right now with the Costas, which is to simply choose not to fish, there's no real other way to enforce our will or to make these payouts fair. So what I thought it would be interesting to do today was to sort of look at the state of bass fishing, sort of the three tours against each other, and then also in comparison to some other sports. So I've prepared a little bit, some graphics here for you guys. So let's kind of jump right into the graphics, and I'll share my thoughts. Okay, since we started out talking about the FLW Cup, let's just look at it. And we're looking at the top 16 finishers, mainly because there's only 16 players in the General Tire World Championship, which is the Major League Fishing World Championship. So what you see here is the top 16 finishers in the tournament earned a grand total of $677,800. That ranged from first place at just over $300,000 to 16th place, paying out $15,000. Let's compare that to the BassMasters Classic, again looking only at the top 16 finishers. First place, very, very similar at $302,000. Total payout just less than what we have in the FLW tournament, with 16th place being $13,000 for a grand total of $645,500 in payout from the BassMasters Classic tournament. Here they are side by side, so you've got relatively the same payout, $677 versus $645.5. And basically both of them are established so that
the lion's share of the winnings, 40-ish+% of the winnings, go to the winner of the tournament. That leads us to the General Tire World Championship, which of course was just recently won by Jacob Wheeler. They claim on their website that the total payout for the General Tire Championship was $700,000. Both interestingly and amazingly, nowhere online can I find the actual payout as to how they broke up that payout. And apparently it's not something they publish. I challenge anybody to find that, and if you can, I would love for you to add it to the comments. But all I can find online is Jacob Wheeler holding up a great big trophy and saying he won a tournament without any indication of exactly how much money he actually won. So in comparing the three major tournament circuits, the championships, at least for the top 16 players, pay basically the same thing. Major League Fishing does appear to have a slightly larger payout for those 16 anglers. However, remember, that's not all of the story. As Paul Harvey used to say, the rest of the story is this. The Forrest Wood Cup and the BassMasters Classic actually have significantly more, actually basically about 4 times more anglers in the tournament, both having fields of 52. So when you take into consideration that the $700,000 is spread across just 16 anglers, and then you add basically another 36 pros, the payouts for both the Forrest Wood Cup at $1.057 million and the BassMasters Classic at $1.032 million, they're both much higher payouts overall than what you see in the General Tire World Cup at the Major League Fishing level. Another way to consider that is basically about 36 pros got some kind of payment from the Forrest Wood Cup or the BassMasters Classic by qualifying for the championship that the guys on the Major League Fishing Tour simply did not have. Now the next slide may hurt your feelings a little bit. We went and looked, since this was this past weekend, the PGA Tour played the Northern Trust Tournament. We went and looked to see what the top 16 finishers at the Northern Trust Tournament earned. Now, by the way, let's face it, if you can hit a golf ball a really long ways and shoot something in the 60s on a regular basis, you're probably going to come out ahead being on the PGA Tour versus being on one of the pro fishing tours. But let's look at the numbers because they're quite interesting. And by the way, I know this is not a fair comparison. The PGA Tour has really come a long way, especially since Tiger Woods hit the tour. But just this past weekend, Patrick Reed won the tournament. He won about $1,660,000. And then second place was basically $1 million, Abraham Answer, all the way down to 16th place, which was a tie with a whole bunch of guys. Basically, they won $175,000 apiece. So the top 16 players in the Northern Trust PGA Tour this weekend earned, and by the way, that's Hollis if y'all just heard him in the background, they earned a net total of $6.6 million as compared to the 3 total tournament purses from the Forrest Wood Cup, the Bassmaster Classic, and the General Tire's World Championship of $700,000 apiece. So what we did here is we gave you those pie charts in scale to each other. So basically the other 3 tournaments, those 3 tournaments paid out each about 1/10, and remember that is in the what each call their World Championship versus just a regular PGA Tour, even though it's a FedEx Cup event, a weekend PGA Tour event paying out $6.6 million, and of course quite a bit more on further down the line as well. So not to play guidance counselor, but let's face it, all of us can't hit a golf ball 310 yards. So maybe if you are wanting to be in professional sports and don't have the actual athletic ability to do so, a really, really good option might be to try to be a caddy. So most PGA Tour caddies earn between 8 and 10% and sometimes more, plus a stipend of what their PGA Tour Pro actually earns. So if we take that at about 10%, the Northern Trust caddies for the top 16 finishing guys this weekend actually made about $664,000 or more than any or all of the top 16 anglers and the Bassmaster Classic made. That's a pretty staggering figure when you consider that. Let me say that again. The top 16 finishers, caddies, at the Northern Trust Tournament on the PGA Tour this weekend probably made more money than the guys who fished the Bassmasters Classic and also finished in the top 16 at the Classic. And let's just finish that thought up with the fact that Forbes estimated that in 2015, 10 PGA Tour caddies earned over $600,000 each. I saw they also estimated that in 2018, Rory McIlroy's caddy had the highest earnout, earning $1.6 million. So if you are sitting with your guidance counselor at your high school or college, you might inquire to them exactly how does somebody become a PGA Tour caddy. I do think one could easily argue the fact that there is one PGA Tour, while at this time there are three major fishing circuits, that being the Forest Wood, the FLW, the Bassmasters, and the Major League Fishing. So I thought, well, let's combine those three. So again, top 16 payout, top 16 finishers for the Forest Wood Cup, the Bassmasters Classic, and the General Tire World Cup. Their combined earnings was just over $2 million. So that would be the three, if you would, majors. And just the Masters alone, the top 16 players at the Masters this year earned just a smidge under $7.7 million. Just almost 4 times what they earned in the three major fishing tours. Now, I used Augusta because if you don't know this story, apparently Ray Scott was something of a golfer or enjoyed golf. And he actually named the Bassmasters after the Masters Golf Tournament, or somehow he mixed that name in because he wanted to be the premier bass fishing events, which I have heard the story that's where the term Bassmasters comes from, which I thought was really interesting. So that's why I mixed those three championships in specifically against the Masters at Augusta. So since we were comparing fishing payouts to other sports, or at least to golf, I thought it might be interesting to include it against other sports as well. So we looked up the minimum rookie wages, if you will, earnings in a couple of other sports. So we looked at the NHL rookie, which I believe for 2019 was $700,000. Major League Baseball was just under $500,000. NFL also just under $500,000. The minimum for a NBA player this year is a little bit over $700,000, each of those being rookie salaries. The 100th place in the money list on the PGA Tour last year was about $1.2 million. That's roughly what you had to make just to keep your tour card. And then we looked at the FLW champion. So that is his earnings. That would be obviously Brian Thrift having earned about $300,000 for winning the championship, and then another, I think, $100,000 if I remember the numbers right, throughout the year. And then also David Dudley, the Angler of the Year. And it's interesting on the FLW Tour, David only won about $90,000 this year on the FLW Tour, but then he won a $125,000 bonus for winning Angler of the Year. So, you heard about how nervous everybody was trying to win that Angler of the Year title. That's why he more than doubled his earnings this year by winning the FLW Angler of the Year title. So I started to title this video, actually I had several titles in mind. Where's the money going? Who's stealing the money? Who's getting rich? I'm going to pick on Bassmaster here because they're the only one that I could find that really promoted or publicized what they thought they were bringing to the table, specifically to Knoxville for the Bassmasters Classic. Splashed right up front on their web pages the fact that they brought economic benefit in excess of $32 million to the city of Knoxville. Now, I am not a professional fisherman, and I certainly don't run tournaments, but I am a salesman. And I can assure you, if I could go to the city of Knoxville and say, look, I'm going to bring $32 million of revenue to your city, I am going to get 10 or 20 or 30% of that money for my organization. So even on the low end of that, if there was $3.2 million paid by the city of Knoxville from their hotel occupancy taxes, from all the different sources they would pay Bassmasters to bring that tournament there, in addition to Bassmasters' other sponsorship, there had to be, and I'm guessing, guys, but I can't imagine there was less than $5 million of revenue to Bassmaster for the Bassmaster Classic. And if they're only paying out $645,000 to the top 16 finishers, and actually, as we saw in an earlier slide, $1 million paid to the 52 participants in the Bassmasters Classic, you really got to wonder where that other 4 or 5 or 6 or $7 million is going. It just seems to me that our major fishing tours are still fishing basically for each other's entry fees more than they are for the sponsors' money, unlike what you see on the PGA Tour or any other major league sports, where the guys are playing and being paid for the entertainment value, for the sponsor money, for the TV money, for all the other money that the NHL, the NFL, the NBA, Major League Baseball is earning. They're not getting their share, they being the professional fishermen. Again, I salute the Major League Fishing guys. I think they are trying to figure this out. But for right now, it seems like professional fishing continues to be a very, very difficult way to earn a living. And don't think that these guys are earning hundreds and hundreds of $1,000s from sponsors. I know a bunch of these guys really, really well. It's a pretty well-known fact that the average boat wrap, which is the biggest thing you can sell basically on the FLW series, is about a $25,000 payment to the angler, not including the cost of the wrap. Typically a sponsor will cover that. But most of those guys are earning $25,000 on average. Some obviously quite a bit more, but also quite a few that are earning quite a bit less to have their boats wrapped. These guys are not making millions of dollars, and in most cases not even hundreds of $1,000s. They are just living paycheck to paycheck, trying to get a check, earning that $10,000 to make the cup. That should not be a big deal to those guys. These guys are professionals. They're trying to make a living at this. I hope eventually the one or all three of the major fishing tours gets this figured out, gets this right, so that these guys can earn a living as professional fishermen. As always, guys, thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this. I know this was a little different for us, but it was just something I felt like I wanted to address. Thanks for tuning in, and we will get the next in our series with the interviews with Texas Park and Wildlife fishery biologist Todd Driscoll up in the next couple days. Thanks, guys.